Welcome to B2B Sales Trends, the podcast dedicated to sales leaders in the B2B space, where we share conversations about innovative and successful sales transformations to keep you up to date on the latest trends. This podcast is brought to you by Global Performance Group.
Welcome yet to another fabulous episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast, my lovely people. The show that brings you hacks, tips, thought leadership for B2B selling and the world that we operate in. My name is Harry Kendlbacher, and today's episode, I'm super pleased to have Steve Chow with us. Steve is the Executive Vice President of Sales in the US for TD DYNNEX. Steve, welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast.
Oh, thanks, Harry. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the invite to participate.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you on. Steve, share with us a little bit as a sort of an intro about yourself, a little bit about your background and TD DYNNEX.
Sure. So as you stated, I'm the Executive Vice President of Sales for TD DYNNEX. I'm now focused on the NSP, National Service Providers, SMB, and MSP channel. Prior to that, my responsibilities did include the mid-market, enterprise, and Fed. At the beginning of this year, I shedded some of those responsibilities, so we're looking to focus on some additional areas. I'll tell you, I've been with the company since 1985, and now we're approximately a $60 billion Fortune 100 company with 23,000 coworkers worldwide. In that mess, I'm badge number 74. I started as a junior inside sales reps over 30 years ago. So I've helped with multiple things, mergers and acquisitions. Most recent was leading the IMO team on the combined and in the combined commercial sales team for DYNNEX and TD as they went through that merge 5 years ago.
Fabulous. I love the I love it when people stay for that amount of time at an organization. It just really means that the organization is constantly evolving, constantly progressing, constantly innovating, and that's really cool. Obviously, you had a very successful career spanning what sounds like over decades, right? The podcast is called B2B Sales Trends. What has changed most, in your opinion, in B2B sales?
Well, aside from technology, and I'll tell you, since you mentioned, and you can tell by my hair color that it has been decades. Technology aside, I started when we were selling 25 megabyte hard drives. But from a B2B sales perspective, and I'm going to give the perspective from a distributor. And so basically that's who I serve. And I think the behavior that it drives within the customer set that I serve also changes the behavior and approach that I have to take. So look, the internet has been a big piece of it, driven a lot of self-service. I think a lot of the buyers in the B2B perspective, the end clients, they do a lot of their own research. So the pre-sale process for them is now a lot of self-serving in terms of the research. I think the only, the big difference in that is that, it used to be before, you used to have a consultative pre-sale. Right now, I think a lot of that information is already pre-thought through by the buyers. So I think of it this way: during the cycle, the value of the sellers are buyers looking for different values from sellers today. They're looking at what else is going to bring a value to the equation. Is it financial? We saw the big rise of OpEx versus CapEx, flexibility, capability, services to glue it together. And I think that now today's sellers, they really have to have the 3 C's. They have to be consultative, they have to be a connector, and they have to be a consensus builder. I think during the sale and the post-sale follow-up, what they look at is to say, how can I be that person that glues all those complex pieces of the sale together and make it work before, during, and after?
Interesting. And there's so many stats out there about buying behavior. And it sounds like with your assessment that you completely agree with that one stat that sticks in my mind that says something about 70% of the buying decision has been made before the buyer even engages a salesperson. And if you crop up with the same old, it's just not going to work anymore, is it?
No. I went to a dinner by the B2B Institute on LinkedIn. And one of the things that they pointed out was, which we're all hearing about and what you just spoke about, is that 70% of that decision is made from terms of the choices of product. So either a couple of things. If you're one of those choices, and I think they said that the top three are picked out. Um, that first impression is important, right? So if you're one of the people that they've already chosen, it's just like it's like The Bachelor. I don't know if you've ever seen The Bachelor. That first rose, that first impression basically gives you a good chance of being the final rose, the final close. The other part of this, you're looking to disrupt one of those choices, then that first impression is even more important. Your elevator pitch has to be good. The things you focus on are not the product. The things you focus on are what other things can you help to make the outcome positive for the buyer,
Right.
the experience.
Right. And I think that's so important. We actually, in our terminology, we call it the power hook, which is the hook that really engages somebody's attention and grabs their attention. And it's never talk about you, never talk about your product, never talk about how great your organization is, but really everything framed around the outcome that you need to drive for your prospect or for your client in this case. It's really interesting. Um, obviously you've been at this, as we mentioned, for a number of years, and you've witnessed a lot of, evolution, B2B selling, shall I say. We talked a little bit about what's changed, but what are some of the most, significant shifts that you have seen, and how have you adapted to those shifts over time?
Yeah, as I said, I think the buyers are coming into a lot of those decisions with some preconceived um, thoughts processes already, right? So the seller's skills have to be sharper than ever before. They have to be able to navigate the complexities of putting together a complex solution. They have to talk about the benefits, not just from a product stance, but from multiple stances. They have to satisfy many constituents within the end client. The solutions themselves obviously have become more complex. And so for us, it's really about education. We continue to educate. We continue to make sure that the people that we put in front of our resellers that are delivering that same solution to the end client are basically saying, hey, um, when you buy this bottle, you should buy this bottle opener. And oh, by the way, Mr. Finance, you shouldn't buy your own bottle opener. Let us rent it to you as an example. So they have to satisfy many constituents. It's not just about the product. You know, I always go back to people always say that IT is about productivity. For us, that's true, but it's also about coaching on what the outcome of that productivity really drives. So it's about coaching and improvement. And for us, the other thing that I think has really changed is that we've always leveraged the data to improve the seller's motions, and now we're seeing more and more of that. So we continue to look at ways to say, how can the seller be better engaged with the right people to make the right purchases and decisions?
Right. You touched on the complexity issues, on the
Hmm.
complex solutions, complex buyer needs, and so forth. Talk a little bit about adapting to that complexity. How are buyers really have evolved their expectations? How are buyer expectations have evolved and are evolving in the future? What's your take on that?
Well, we've already touched upon buyers are more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So that is something we're seeing out there. I mean, we live in an age where information is available like that. Um,
Mm.
I think buyers always expect you to be on. We're in this world we live in. We're always expected to be always on. So um, that is a change that we've seen. The multi platforms. I know myself. I'm managing email and phone calls and texts, and I mean, you and have connected a few different ways over direct messages over social platforms. I think buyers expect you to be able to address benefits again from multi dimensions, not just what's the benefit of the product, but how does it benefit the other constituents within the company? Is it a financial benefit? Is it an operational benefit? Is it an outcome? And I think the other part of it is that, and I hate to say this, is that as technology goes from being magic to mundane, I think buyers want to be able to not have to talk to someone for the transactional or mundane. They want that part of the transaction to be self-served. So it allows you to focus more time on the complex.
Right. Right. I couldn't agree more with you. We see that a lot, and hear it from buyers as well. And now, if those are the buyers' expectations, what changes are you seeing in how customers want to engage, and how are sales teams really adapting to that?
I think I think again, when we kind of look at the life cycle of technology, it starts out being magic, right? And at that point, you want to talk to someone. You want someone to explain away the magic, or to show you how the magic is done. Um, as that becomes more mundane, I think buyers want to, again, self-service, right? And so, you and I have had this topic or discussed this topic before, is that I think buyers expect sellers to constantly educate themselves, to really understand and explain, and maybe I hate to say it in layman's terms, but maybe make some of that magic understandable. I think the buyer expects the seller in a lot of cases to be able to explain, the complexity away to the different constituents within the customer. Um, and I think the engagement of that is that, you know, look, like I said, for the mundane, that stuff can be handled self-service. For the complex, it requires more than just speaking to one person within the client. It requires speaking to different levels within the client to really bring all those pieces together. I was at a talk, and they had a they basically had a survey, and the survey said, "What are the three top reasons that people give for losing a sale?" And they did a survey, and the survey said it was what you could expect: price, it was product, the technology wasn't right, it was politics, I didn't know the right people to talk to. When they went back to those same people that the sellers had said, "Here's what happened," the actual top reason that they gave was the seller. The seller didn't engage with the right people. The seller didn't understand who to talk to. The seller didn't understand how to drive the complexity out of the whole transaction. So I think that's some of the evolution of how sellers have to continue to be sharper.
Right. And so, really, the human touch still matters. And where does it matter most, in your opinion?
I think the human touch is important from I think the human touch is important in terms of a couple of things. Um, One, we used to live in an age um, where you would get your your information would be from trade shows and you know people coming to you, cold calls, etc. Right? So let's just say, first off, in the first part, it's you know the human touch matters in terms of really making sure that your brand is correct, the brand you carry as a seller is correct. Um, that it's that first influence or first impression, like I said, like The Bachelor, where you can come in and say, okay, let me connect with this organization, let me understand the organization, let me be able to move, from the top of the stack all the way down to the bottom, get all the constituents in place. I think the the buyers expect you to simplify the complexity, be able to help with the consensus building, and look, we live in an age where any solution is multi-platform, right? So you need to be able to bring those all together. So coordination among those parts of those to make up the complexity. I think the buyers expect the seller to be able to say, "Let me tell you about the opportunity besides just helping, um, you know, with the solution itself. It's helping suggestions for improvement." So, for instance, it's I think it's listening and the creativity within the framework of what that solution brings, not just to the problem itself, but maybe some of the other benefits out of and the other outcomes that can happen from bringing that solution to bear. And then problem solving. Look, things don't always go right. When they don't, the only way to solve problems is through human to human interaction. So that is probably one of the things, to be able to manage that from beginning to end.
Right. right. Um, and obviously you've touched on the fact that there is multiple platforms, digital is exploding, AI is coming into every parts of our lives, really. And you've made a strong case just now, talking about the human element, that it's got to be front and center, really, still. Where do you think that human touch still has the greatest impact when it comes to the sales process?
I'll tell you, one of the things I do whenever I walk into an RFP or a presentation, I say, you know, draw me an influence chart. Show me who the influences are. Show me what their desires, needs, wants, problems are. And so I think, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think the human touch helps get all the constituents within a buyer in line. I always tell people, um, make sure that you get all the people that can say yes to believe in you. Make sure that you get all the people that can say no, not to fear what you could do by coming as their provider of a solution. So I think that answers your question. I don't know if I did answer
Yeah.
that correctly, to be
No,
honest.
absolutely, absolutely. And and obviously, you mentioned the human touch is important. AI, however, is part of our day-to-day life now. And I keep hearing that term of we got to sell smarter with all the technology that supports us now. But how can how can AI help without hurting relationships? You just stated that relationships are really key and essential to any B2B sales process or customer relationship. So how can AI help without hurting those relationships?
You know, AI is continuing to explode, right? It's going to be continue to be a part of everyday life, and for sure the B2B seller's life. So Um, I think first it's taking some of the mundane work off the plate and allow sellers to use that time to improve their skills, to focus on more value add activities. That includes maybe being quicker, more available, more respondent to questions that a buyer may ask. So that's what AI will help with, some of that, right? Second, I think more so, it'll help identify with those activities that are aligned within a customer. You'll have an AI agent saying, see, when you speak to the client, you should only be speaking about this. You should be speaking about that. I think AI will begin to basically coach the seller to be a better seller, right? Um, and look, that'll help the relationship because the seller will become more relevant to the client. And third, there's always the coaching on the skill sets of the sellers, right? I've seen a lot of tools that are here or coming or that will drive upskilling a seller's motion. How much time is spent in speaking to a client about relevant things versus non-relevant things, right? AI will begin to track those and begin to coach you to be a better seller, right? So it will help train, it will help refine, it will help the seller become a better connection for the buyer.
Right, right, right. Interesting. When you think about, let's shift gears here a little bit. When you think about sales and marketing and the connection between the two, aligning the two, really, and a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of our listeners still have a real challenge aligning sales and marketing. Why is this still so hard, in your opinion?
You know, um, I mentioned that I'd gone to a dinner and they had done this presentation where they said, marketing and sales targets or tactics as an average are only aligned 16% of the time. And I hope that we're better than that. Um, but I understand. I think for my company, we've done a good job internally. I think one thing that we recognize is that the mission needs to be the same. And the tactics that lead to that mission outcome need to be aligned. So, as an example, recently, what we've done is we've included placing more parts of marketing and sales under one umbrella so that everybody has the same mission statement. I don't think it's hard. It's about the approach being correct to make it easy.
Hmm. Where do you see the
It's the
biggest
alignment.
where do you see the biggest opportunity is to improve that collaboration between sales and marketing?
We spoke a lot on this
We
call,
have.
this talk about human touch. I think
Right.
it's human touch. I think
Yeah.
you know one reason, going back to some of the topics we've spoken about here, that we need human touch is because a lot of what we're seeing out there, especially in the complex solutions, is about collaboration, and you cannot digitize collaboration. So, uh, human touch driven collaboration is what is the biggest opportunity. How do we get the right people in the right room to speak about the right same topics to drive better alignment? For instance, are the desired outcomes the same? Are the goals aligned? Are the resources all coordinated to lead toward that mission outcome? I actually think this is where AI can help because it can answer the questions that the same smart people get into a room and ask, and then AI can spit the answer back faster. So then, our reaction to those answers can be fast. So it can analyze back the data, give inferences, um, and then humans can take that inference in the right direction. And whether that be to agree or disagree, refine the ask or agree and move forward with what's needed. So I think those are things that that is a big opportunity. Refining how AI can provide us data so we can react faster.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Steve, the last question that I always ask at every podcast, and I'm very curious about your response because a man of your experience, it'll be very interesting to see what you believe the top 3 skills and behaviors are that salespeople need nowadays to be tackling all these issues that we've talked about. So, what are the top 3 skills, in your opinion, that salespeople need to possess and really be excellent at to be elite salespeople?
I think the first thing is you always need to be curious. We live in a world where things are changing so fast. Moore's law is a true thing. So I think always be curious, always be expanding your knowledge, always be teaching yourself. I think the second thing that drives that first thing is ambition. You always never satisfied, always be hungry, always look for how I can improve myself, how I can improve my performance, how I can be better at whatever I do. It's almost an athlete's thought process, right?
Right.
And then the last thing is, hey, I think you really need to be able to understand the value of relationships and how to connect all those pieces together and be real. I am a firm believer in partner obsession as as what drives a good selling experience for the client, and therefore those bring benefits to the seller.
Right. Right. Absolutely. You got to be curious. You got to have ambition. You always got to be hungry, and you got to be authentic and yourself to be an elite salesperson. You've heard it here first. Steve, thank you. I know our listeners very, very much appreciate your insights, your thought leadership. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Harry. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Great. My lovely people, 2 calls to action for you. Please share this episode and the wonderful insights that Steve has shared with us today. Go to the b2bsalestrends.com site to share and subscribe if you wish, if you liked it, as well as go to the B2B Sales Trends podcast, the YouTube channel. Until the next episode, look after yourself and happy B2B selling. Bye-bye.